Question from Emily Archibald. I notice most of your lessons are up, down on each note. How do I add slurring? Is there a guideline? How important is it to use consistent bowing throughout a song? That's a good question. Kind of a hard question to answer, and probably some conflicted views on this from other fiddlers. But I'll do my best, Emily. So, in a nutshell, it's kind of a personal thing. It depends on the style you're doing. It depends on this particular situation or the point you are in the tune, okay, whether you're going to slur or not. So I'll just give you a general guide to dealing with slurs, and this applies to everybody. So the first thing I usually say is, once you've learned how to do a slur, and let's back up a little bit. Maybe some of you are beginners and don't even know what a slur is. A slur is playing more than one note in a bow. So instead of going open one, down, up, by the way, that is called separate bows. Instead of doing that, we can do, say, 2 notes per bow. Down, down for open, and then up. Notice there's 2 notes. And just a beginning lesson on slurs, pause. Pausing is an amazing practice. Be kind to your hands. Give them time to reset in your direction. So you may be more advanced and be bored by that little statement, but you know, it can apply to very advanced things as well, like slur 8. Maybe that's, you know, where you're at, your particular challenge is what you're trying to work on. You would still find benefit from this pausing practice. All right. So basically you can practice slurs on simple exercises and then in tunes. And then in scales. So if you kind of take that progression of doing it on just 2 notes or 4 notes, then on a full scale, then you can transition to doing it on tunes. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But think of the scales not as just like this horrible thing you're supposed to do, but think of them as music. Think of scales as little tunes, all right, that help you to learn stuff. So let's go back to the easiest slur pattern, I think, is slur 2. You would do it on a scale. All right, I'm going to run through all the slur patterns now, but I want to mention that for all of these, I have play-along tracks on Fiddlehead in which you get focused practice on slurring just 2 notes, slurring 4 notes, slurring a whole scale, and that just the practice of this on scales, just to jump ahead now, if you really can do all your slur patterns easily on any scale, then they'll just start to come out in tunes. And if they don't, you'll have more of an intuitive sense of how to add them in scales. But we'll get to adding them to tunes in a second. Now I'm just going to run through all the main slur lessons that I teach on Fiddlehead. So slur 2, then we could do slur 3. You can master that with all kinds of patterns. Make up your own exercises. So that was open 1 and 2. We could just go up, just go down, do 1, 2, 3 instead. Slur 3 can be used on jigs. There's a whole bunch of jig patterns. I'm going to do them quickly now, so apologies, but just to do a brief survey. Slur 2, separate 1. Separate 1, slur 2. Moving on to 4-note patterns, slur 4. do it on full scale. Sorry if I'm going too fast, but doing a survey, not a detailed lesson on each of these. Slur 2, separate 2. Slur 2, separate 2. Slur 2, separate 2. Slur 2. Real slow. That's cool because it creates the hoedown pattern of long, short, short. 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 All right, and then you could do longer ones. Slur 8. And then more complex ones like the Georgia Shuffle. I'm not going to get into the more complex ones right now. One last one that I'll get into, though, that I touched upon in the very first question, the pulsing question or the circular bowing, is slurring across strings. It's hard, I think, for beginners anyway. So you can start with just D, A on the down bow, pause, up bow. Two notes per bow. I've got dedicated exercises for this to really help you practice on fiddlehead. Add a pause if it's hard. Go backwards. This is usually harder. And then you can kind of start to play with it and make up your own exercises, kind of hybridize them like D, A, then up, A, D. This might be a little easier. Okay, so long answer to your question, Emily. And so you master the scales on little exercises and little. So here's kind of a diagram I pulled up before the lesson to help explain it. So basically you start with doing patterns on single notes or couple notes. Then you do this is for an Irish embellishment called the mordant, which I teach in the Irish Fiddle Journeys course. And then you do whatever you're doing on scales, and then you start with tune phrases, and then eventually the whole tune. So let's stick with slurs and look at that progression. So let's go back to the easiest one, slur 2. And let's just, I just did it on a scale. Now you could just try it on some tune you're working on. So how about Arkansas Traveler? Just pulling a tune out of the air. So what you would do is you don't try to do it throughout a whole song. You start with the phrase. So I think that was part of your question, Emily. How do you know what to do a consistent bowing? And I'm sort of avoiding that part of the question because it's very individual. What I'm suggesting is you kind of experiment and do what sounds and feels right. So I could take like Arkansas Traveler, try slur 2. And then that's the first quarter. I'm just gonna try slur 2 on the first 4 notes. So slur 2. Slur 2, and start over. So you may notice that if I do this loop, each time I'll start in a different direction. Nothing wrong with that. So this may be something that other fiddlers disagree with, but I think you should be able to do things multiple ways. You should be able to start something up bow or down bow. The more you can do that, the more fluid you are, the more able you are to just kind of roll with things as you go through a tune. That said, you may find a way that works perfect for you in a particular song, and then you really practice that, cultivate that, all right? So maybe I experiment. I'm like, well, I don't like that I don't quite like that. Doesn't feel quite right. Now I'm gonna try something different. Like on those first four notes, instead of slur two, I'm gonna do slur two, separate two. Speed it up. So to me, that feels better because then I kind of get a consistent hoedown, long, short, short. But it may not feel right to you. Or maybe you're not good enough at sorry to put it that way, but you just haven't really learned slur two, separate two that well yet, so you're not ready to do it. Fine, don't do it. Do just slur two. Or you know what? Just do separate bows. Nothing wrong with just separate bows through a tune. You can still make it sound good. You can still have fun with it. So yeah, so I had a thought while playing that, but anyhow, so you experiment with you really try to do these on tunes, then you try to do them on small parts of phrases. Sorry, I meant to say scales. You learn slur patterns, and anything you can any technique you practice on a scale, and then you try to play around with it in a tune by doing a loop on one little phrase, and then that your testing is not totally done yet. It's like little experiments. Then you would maybe do the first two quarters and see if that works with it. So anyway, good question. All of these questions are really good, but thanks. Go to fiddlehead.com for a progressive step-by-step course outline, color-coded tabs, play-along tracks, sheet music, and much more. Thanks for watching the video. Excellent. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.